Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here on this Tuesday, September 2nd, to bring you all of your top stories, live events, and breaking news from across the country and across the world. I do want to get back to a big story that we have been following here, as a judge has now ruled that the Trump administration's use of National Guard troops during Southern California immigration enforcement protests was illegal. The judge saying earlier today that President Trump's administration violated federal law by sending troops to accompany federal agents on immigration raids. Our Fox 11 LA team has been following this from the get-go. They provided a lot of the video that you're seeing right there on your screen, and they just filed this report.
For a few days in June, 3 blocks in downtown Los Angeles became the focal point of protests against ICE raids in the greater Los Angeles area. Despite objections from LA Mayor Karen Bass and Governor Gavin Newsom, President Trump sent in National Guard and Marines. Nearly 3 months later, U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer sided with the governor in his lawsuit against that action.
This decision validates that the power of the president is not boundless. Trump is not king. Trump's decision to deploy military troops to the streets of Los Angeles was nothing more than an act of political theater and public intimidation.
Political theater? Not according to the president.
We cleaned up Los Angeles. We did a great job there. And it was overwhelming what was going on. And again, the police chief made a statement that we could not have done, there's no way they could handle it. You saw what was happening out there. It was going to be a disaster. We stopped it cold.
But in fact, LAPD Chief McDonnell said multiple times he didn't want nor need the federal troops.
The Marines working together with the Army National Guard are in the same configuration, and their mission is the same. But their mission is not to work with us on the streets to maintain order, restore order, and keep everybody safe.
Los Angeles has one of the largest police departments in the country. Their officers are hired, trained, and resourced for civilian law enforcement. The National Guard and Marines are not.
And that was our Fox 11 LA team with a breakdown of all of this. But I do want to dig in just a little bit deeper. Let's bring in James Desimone, an LA civil rights attorney, to explain this a little bit further. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us on this Tuesday.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, so first off, the big question I did want to ask you here is, can you break down kind of the basics of all of this and what that judge decided?
Well, it was an exceptional order today, which really laid out, because you not only had a judge who's making a ruling, but it was after a 4-day trial of evidence. And he relied on the Posse Comitatus Act, which basically says that the police powers are reserved to the states. I mean, this emanates from the 10th Amendment. This act was passed after Reconstruction, 1878, ironically, by southern states who didn't want the federal troops there to enforce some of the things that were happening after slavery. But this is the law. Police practices, police law enforcement is reserved to the states. We have the LAPD, we have the LA County Sheriffs. There was no insurrection, so there was no basis for sending all those troops to Los Angeles.
What are some of the legal limits? This is a question that's been asked quite a bit, but what are some of the legal limits of the president's authority when it comes to deploying the National Guard domestically, especially if it's not considered to be non-emergency, which is what the judge seemed to determine?
Well, that's just it. It has to be an emergency. I mean, you can't just, as a matter of course, insert the military into major cities across the United States, as our president seems hell-bent, intent on doing right here. I mean, what would have justified it? Maybe January 6, 2021, when you actually had a mob descending upon our Capitol and trying to overthrow the workings of government so that the election wouldn't take place. That truly was an insurrection. They were trying to stop our government from proceeding, and were doing so in a violent way. They weren't sent on that day by our president, and they certainly, in this instance, what we had here in Los Angeles, which, yes, you had some vandalism, you had some violence. I am a Los Angeles-based attorney. I have been down there. I have many clients who participated in those protests who were injured. So I really have a good finger on the pulse of what was going on there. You had a few Waymos burned. You had some rock throwing. LAPD and LA County sheriffs knows how to handle those situations. I don't agree with everything they did to do so, but they certainly didn't justify bringing in the military to dominate our city.
What are the options that are available to the Trump administration now moving forward? Do they go to court again? How does this all work? What is the next step that they can do?
100%. I mean, this is a district court opinion. Yes, it's a very well-reasoned district court opinion, 52 pages after numerous days in trial and evidence presented. But there's a direct appeal. And in fact, Judge Breyer stayed this decision until September 12th, Friday, September 12th, in order to give the federal government the right to appeal. It'll probably go perhaps to the same three judges that decided it. Two of them were Trump appointees. They saw things differently. And then we might have what's called an en banc decision, which then is decided by 11 justices of the Ninth Circuit. And ultimately, let's face it, given the gravity of this issue and given what's you have the president who wants to push this on the cities, the use of the military. He's saying now it's going to be to Chicago and to Baltimore. So ultimately, it's going to be a decision by the Supreme Court as to whether or not this is legal.
When you look at it now, it has been several months since the National Guard was deployed there to Los Angeles. Does this ruling have any impact on the future? When you look to the future, if the National Guard were to be deployed to a similar situation, is that essentially what the purpose of all of this is? Because obviously, all of this happened months ago.
Well, we still have troops here, and we still have immigration enforcement actions. So, but as far as the confrontations that were occurring back in June and July, they've quieted down a bit. And this decision can really only affect the state of California, because the way in which the judge decided this is that it was the state of California, Gavin Newsom, who filed the lawsuit and was held to have standing to sue. So it only impacts the state of California as far as its reach at this point. But yes, I mean, in terms of the practical matter, I think that there's going to be a holding down until September 12th an appeal and see what the Ninth Circuit does with this decision before you have any more major moves in California with respect to more troops. They seem to be coming to other states.
And that's what I was going to ask you, because now as we take a look at the situation I know, of course, you're an LA-based attorney, but talking about what's going on in D.C., what's going to possibly go on in Chicago, does that play a role into all of this and what the president and his administration can actually do?
Well, Judge Breyer in his decision did mention the fact that the Trump administration does intend to do this in other cities. And he used that as a way to show, look, there's nothing going on in those cities which has come up where you have a situation where there actually is an insurrection. So it was sort of a warning across the bow, but it wasn't as if his decision could have any impact. Now, if there's a situation where a governor truly does need like we had back in 1992 after Rodney King. I mean, you had the state of California, which did ask for the National Guard. You had buildings burned, 60, 70 people dying over a weekend after that decision came down. There was much more of a level of unrest throughout the city of Los Angeles than we've had in these recent days, which have really been a reaction to what people feel when they're confronted with immigration coming into our city, tearing people apart, going to courthouses, going to places where people are working and taking hardworking people off the street. And you have people that are objecting to that and exercising their First Amendment rights. When they go too far and there's vandalism, that's what the police are for. The military really isn't even trained to act in those situations.
James Desimone, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help discuss this just a little bit further. Obviously, there's a lot to it, but anything we missed, anything you want to make sure to add before I let you go?
Well, just that in this instance, when they're talking about what is being restrained, it really is the police powers. So it's not as if they cannot be here at all, but what's enjoined is arrests, apprehensions, searches, seizures, traffic control, crowd control, those types of powers that are usually reserved for police forces are hands off for the federal government. It really is under the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And we'll see how this plays out in the higher courts.
All right, James, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.